There is a key difference between being alone and being lonely, but these two things are interconnected. And especially in the case of loneliness, it has the unexpected connection with gratitude. Now, you may be baffled by what I just said. How can you be grateful for being lonely? I'm so glad you asked. And on this very special day, we're going to get into it. Hello again. Happy Valentine's Day at 8:22 p.m. My name is Keyshawn and I am the founder, owner, / designer of Chasmic, Desist, a clothing brand dedicated to illustrating mental and emotional health issues along with any related situations, in addition to providing my own perspectives and others' perspectives in terms of mental health. But today's video is going to be about the unexpected connection between loneliness and gratitude. Now, as I said before, as I asked the question before, it really seems paradoxical. How can you be grateful for being lonely, not being alone? So before we get into that, let's differentiate the meaning between being alone and being lonely. First, being alone is simply, well, basically I'm alone right now. There's nobody else in here with me. There's nobody else around me. Being alone just means that there's no company in your little bubble. There's nothing there. Now, being lonely is an effect of being alone. Being lonely just means you're sad about not having anybody around you. Now, but not having anybody around you doesn't necessarily mean the immediate vicinity, right? You can be lonely, as many of you may know, you can be lonely even in the presence of others. And for my case, and I'm assuming for many of you, you can feel lonely in this way when you feel like nobody else understands you, when you feel like you're not being validated. You can feel lonely in a variety of circumstances, whether you're in the presence of company or not. And that is not a great feeling. You can call it depression, you can call it denial, you can call it whatever it is, but the point is that it is not a great feeling, it is sad. Now, when you get to that state, you have two options. I'll put up four fingers. You have two options, right? You can sink or you can swim. Like I said in the previous video, you can sink or you can swim. Now, what exactly do I mean by that? Well, it's not exactly I'm not being harsh. All right, I'm not just being a jerk about it. Sinking means that you're falling into that abyss of depression, that abyss of loneliness, and that place is very hard to get out of. It is extremely hard to get out of. And swimming just means that you are staying afloat. You're trying to get to shore. You're trying to find a way out of it. Now, help can come and you can accept that help, or you can help yourself. But when you sink either no help comes or you choose not to help yourself, or the combination of the two. All right? It's not complicated, so don't make it so. All right? Now, before I continue, let me check. Yes. So I want to, before I continue on to the next point and explain why gratitude is an important connection with loneliness, I will briefly elaborate on my own experience with sinking and swimming in terms of loneliness. So I don't know if you've ever felt this feeling before, but imagine floating in the ether, like you're alive, right? You're walking about in your day-to-day life, but you're simply existing, if that makes sense. And I'm sure that for many of you it does. Simply existing is not a great way to live. Let's say you have a job 9 to 5. You wake up, go to work, go home, eat, repeat, right? Or you're struggling through life and you're just doing things to meet ends, to just like get by at the end of the day. And you don't know what you're doing or how you're doing it. You're just being autonomous. You have no real motivation except to be alive, but then you also don't want to be alive, but you also don't want to go. You're stuck in the in-between land, and I'm gonna call that the ether. Now, the ether is a place where, you know, your imagination can go. You can have dreams there, but it is also a place where you could easily get lost in if you fall off the path. So it's a double-edged sword. The ether is a place where wondrous things can happen, or you can fall into the void, and you're struggling to find your way back to the path. And for me, I was, for a good number of years, good number of months, I was floating in the ether. I didn't know what I was doing. I was motivated, but not really. I didn't want to do anything, but I did it anyway because I knew I had something to do, but I didn't feel good, I didn't also feel great. I just felt, and I was incredibly lonely, even though I knew people cared about me and they did their best to understand me. There were certain parts of myself that couldn't grasp that reality. It was making it very difficult for me to not feel lonely. I hope this is all making sense. I hope that this is connecting with you. It's a very complex phenomenon to explain. But as I was floating in the ether, you could say that parts of myself were slowly swimming back up to the surface, but other part of me was just sinking. I was just sinking, but not sinking so drastically that I couldn't get out, or I didn't have a way to get out. I had plenty of ways to get out, and I had to stick to what I was doing. But along the way of me being in the ether, me embodying that internal loneliness, in my mind, I pushed people away, but I don't think I did. But at the same time, I think I did. You see how this could be very confusing, and that's what the ether is. So I guess, like, as I kept moving forward and kept pushing myself, I got out of there. I kept swimming, even if it was ever so slowly, because I didn't like the feeling. It's not great when you have all your friends around you and you feel great, but then there's the core part of yourself that feels like you do not belong and that nobody else knows who you are and doesn't accept you. Does that make sense? It's not great. And on this, unique day of Valentine's Day, that's also not great. But here's where gratitude comes in. When you, let me just double check my notes here. Yes, if and when you choose to swim, but let's just discard the if. Because you're here, you want to swim, or you have already swam. All right, so when you choose to swim, you are forcing yourself to grow. Now, people can help you, right? People can always help you, but they can only help you so much. You have to do a substantial amount of work as well. They're not just gonna help you and you not help. That's just dead weight at that point. I don't know if you've ever been around drunk people or someone who doesn't want to do anything and you're trying to push them and you're just dragging them along. And it's extremely difficult. They have to help at some point, just like you have to help yourself at some point. So when you're swimming, you're forcing yourself to grow, just like I had to force myself to grow. Now you can go to therapy, you can do meditation, you can do yoga, you can go on a retreat, you can do whatever you need to do. But ultimately, you need to face the core of the problem. Understand why you're so lonely in the first place. You need to be able to get out of the void, out of the abyss, and back on that path towards beauty and imagination and success and vibrancy. Why would you ever want to be in the void? At your core, that inner 8-year-old you or 10-year-old you or that future version of you and that present version of you really doesn't want to be in the void. It wants to grow. Evolution is the key to everything. You want to evolve. It is your core instinct to evolve in a number of ways, not just physically, not just age-wise, but emotionally, intellectually. And when you do that, eventually you'll be grateful for the process, because being lonely really really puts into frame a lot of your problems, a lot of your flaws, and you have to be able to face them at some point. And when you're lonely, especially when you're alone and lonely, oh, it's it's incredibly difficult. But I'm speaking for myself personally. I am grateful for those moments on my journey, because they have helped me become who I am now. I became lonely, and a lot of my problems kept resurfacing, especially the ones that I pushed away, I pushed down. And like I said in the previous video, you can only push problems away for so long, and they'll always catch up to you at some point. And thank goodness I didn't experience the worst of it. I was just floating. I was still motivated enough to keep trying to swim. I was not as fortunate as others in a similar predicament as mine. And that's why a support system is so important, but that's why your own internal support system is so weird. You having a extremely strong willpower, a key motivator, discipline is extremely important. And I'm so grateful for the fact that I experienced loneliness. And as confusing as that may sound, I'm grateful for the fact that I was lonely, because I'm so strong now. And I have the ability to make others strong. Now, I am not a professional, I'm not a teacher, but I am a person just like you, just like the rest of you. And I'm not the oldest, I'm not the wisest, but I have my own experiences that I know have helped others, and I know can help you if you choose to listen. Especially on this day where a lot of people feel lonely, a lot of people are alone. Next, let me look at my next point. And I'm also grateful for the fact that I was able to learn how to love myself. Now, in one of my previous videos I just said, love yourself, love yourself. Now, what does that actually mean, loving yourself? Well, one, give yourself a break. Right? Don't be so hard on yourself. Now, don't BS, don't bullshit, and give excuses for very heinous things that you do. That's not, you be accountable for yourself. But for certain things, don't be so hard on yourself. You know, when I'm being hard on myself, or I'm in very negative situations and I feel certain parts of me come up, I do my best to figure out what parts of me are popping up. And usually it's the younger me. All right, the younger me had a lot of dreams, but also went through a lot of things. And I found myself at times pretending I'm holding my own hand to console myself. and talking to myself internally to show that I am loved, to explain that I am loved. And I give myself various examples as to why I'm loved. I have a great support system. I'm strong. I'm improving in a myriad of ways, just as I'm sure many of you are as well. And I'm nurturing all the fractured parts of me, all the damaged parts of me. And it's hard, but it is extremely necessary, and it makes me feel so good. And for many of us, it's therapy, it's meditation, it's yoga, it's going on walks, it's exercising, it's affirming yourself. You are on this planet, you are in this reality for a reason. No one just pops in for no reason. There are no coincidences in life. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit later in a different video or in a different context. But nihilism aside, loving yourself is so important. And when you're lonely, it's very hard to love yourself. But as you get out of that, you keep learning how to love yourself. And that is another thing that you will be grateful for. You see the connection that I'm talking about now, that I mentioned in the beginning? Let's see, what else? Yes. But to get to that point of gratitude, the path out of loneliness, you're gonna go through a lot of emotions. You're gonna go through love, hate, denial, anger, sadness. You're gonna be in an incredibly volatile state, unstable state. And if you're bipolar, this is really gonna be hard, right? But it's all a necessary part of the path. And all those emotions, those things that I just listed, can be projected onto others or yourself. Usually it's both, right? You don't project things onto others that you don't already project onto yourself. Simple emotional intelligence connection. Very simple. And a lot of your insecurities will come out, and that roller coaster will just be highs and lows, and then plateaus and highs and lows again until the ride is over. And then when the ride is over, you'll be like, oh, man, that was something. I'm glad I'm done with it though. I learned a lot of things about myself. And you could be screaming and kicking and whatever, but at the end of the day, whether you hated it or you're neutral about it or whatever, you'll be so grateful that you did it, you got through it, and that you're done with it, especially that you're done with it. You're never going back to that point. You learn your lesson, great. All right, let's get to, I think this is the last point. Yes. So like I just said, you'll be extremely grateful in the end for all the work that you have done to get out of that point, to swim. And it is because you have done, like I just said, done so much work to basically enjoy being alone. And I don't know if all those people that go to restaurants by themselves or walk by themselves or go to movies by themselves, they're very comfortable with being alone. They're not lonely. I do all those things and I'm very comfortable with being alone. In fact, I usually thrive in it. Just because I'm alone doesn't mean I'm lonely or sad. It just means like I'm happy with myself. And being happy with yourself also means that you have done so much work to complete yourself that you really don't need any other people to complete you. Now you still have things to learn, obviously, like teachers and yogis or whatnot, and therapists and whatnot. They'll help you add more things to you to fill in some blank spots that you need. But for the most part, you have done an incredible amount of work to not only enjoy being alone, but thrive in it in such a way that you have completed most of yourself by yourself. You know, you can be taught all these things, you can learn all these things, but at the end of the day, it is up to you to absorb them, understand them, accept them, and nurture them. All right? It's just a series of tests at the end of the day. You go to class, you get the lessons, you have to learn the lessons, you have to study it, work at it, and eventually, when you do enough good work, you'll pass the test. And although you've gotten help from others, all the work that was done was by you. You did all the work. Other people, other entities, other things just gave you the information to work with. It is up to you to figure out what to do with it. And with that being said, when other people come into your life, they're not necessarily there to complete you. In fact, it is different. It's very, very different. They are there to add to your experience. And when you're after this loneliness path and learning a lot of things about yourself, and including learning discernment and whatnot, the people that come into your life will just be positive for the most part. They will positively add to your life. They won't necessarily complete you, because you've already basically completed yourself. So, did I get through all my points? I sure did. I got through all my points. This video was a little bit longer than I intended, but I feel like I've gotten a lot of information across. Before we head out, brand updates, website updates, clothing updates. I've gotten through a lot of my art blocks. I've done a lot of work on the website. I'm not gonna give a hard release date for everything just yet, but we are nearing the end of the rebuild, basically. And after the website's up, I'm going to start implementing more art videos and commercials and whatnot. But these types of videos will be the mainstay, because that's what Chasmic Desist is about. So make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But before that, I will leave you with one last question that I implore you to take real time to consider and figure out. How far will you go? How far will you go to get to where you need to be?